I'm tired already.
Yeah, maybe this next one won't go too long either.
Public hearings probably go longer.
Public hearing, hopefully they ain't too much to it.
Yeah, so,
I don't think
all right,
so.
I'll let you go. I'll see you tomorrow, I'm sure, tomorrow morning.
It's just going from R2 to R3.
I'm so ahead, but I thought she was going back up. Oh, yes, yes. Yes.
Mr. P.
See, he's got some signs out already.
I was gonna say, I've been seeing some
He's getting-
signs.
I was just telling her, I said, see, you got some signs out already. I
Do, yeah.
hit the campaign train early.
I need to. I need to. Yeah.
I don't know, it's a long time sometimes.
I know, it's a long, it was, it's a long.
I feel like I need, you know, name recognition. Folks don't know who I am, so I'm gonna really try to get out there as much as I can.
Yeah, well, those signs don't cost you nothing, so yeah, it's good, just put them out.
Yep.
Then they turn the heat on, now I'm hot. I'm tired, I'm tired.
This mental work's tough, and I think it is work sometimes,
I think so too.
draining.
I like being physically tired. I don't like being mentally tired. Physically tired feels good.
Yes, well, I just met him, but I've heard his name.
Got a few signs out.
Yeah, I saw that. I sure did. Yes, sir. Yes, indeed.
There are ways this probably goes. Your agenda items, of course, very years to that doesn't mean it'll be a long time.
What do you think?
It
Didn't feel as cold better.
No, it's not as cold. I got a
Must
little
have
show.
adjusted it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I know it's hot in here now.
It was cool earlier, but I think they.
How are you?
Look, I like being cool.
Do you?
I'd much rather be cool than hot.
Going good. Well, how's it going for you? Good.
Yeah. We just finished up the tea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So, yeah, we'll be starting, because we just do one class at night, you go over there with college.
Uh-huh.
So we just finished up, and we start back again in September, but just recruiting for another class, it takes the summer.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what's good?
I've been up way too long today.
3:15 this morning, it was early.
Well, I didn't get up till 4 this morning. You beat me up. You were up at 3:15? Oh my gosh.
I had to go to Robbins and pour them their samples, and then I had to go to Crystal Lake, do that, and then I had to come back for the registration at 8:30.
I was up at 4. That's early enough.
That is
Get
early.
forward to my next time. I'll get up, I'll be able to get sleep till 4 tomorrow.
Me too. I'll sleep till 4 and get tomorrow day. Ugh. But see, look, usually I'm up at 4, but then I go home at like 1 and I nap for, 45 minutes or so. I didn't get to do that today. I had to come here. I got no nap today.
When I'm at Fort Bragg, I can nap all day after.
Look, my husband and I both will be home about 2 o'clock every day with a short little nap.
I think it's good to have a little
I
nap.
know. Of course, his naps sometimes last long, and then he snores during, he's in his chair, and he
And you
snores
have a
over
sleep
there.
test
Huh?
Does he have
Oh,
sleep
he,
too?
yeah, he has sleep apnea. He sleeps with a, oh, he doesn't put it on when he falls asleep in his recliner.
People said, I couldn't sleep at night if I did that. I said, yeah, I sleep good, even better. I just
Look.
pick up right where I left off.
He, when he did his sleep study, he would stop breathing 76 times an hour.
That is so hard on his heart.
I know, so that's good. So he sleeps with a, he has a CPAP. But if he falls asleep during,
Sean has a mouthpiece that holds his jaw forward.
really, yeah, no, his was bad. And I like his little seat, it's just on his nose. I call him Mr. Snuffleupagus. That's what it makes me think of, Mr.
If I'm at
Snuffleupagus.
home, that's why I need to go back.
That's good, that's good.
If I'm at home, I ain't getting no break. Too much.
I'm sorry, I'm switching the.
I know, you're, oh, do you, yes, I'm well aware. He has been, yeah, he's, God, been diagnosed with sleep apnea, I don't know how many years, forever.
Still may be.
But like when he travels, he takes it, but if he falls asleep for a nap, he doesn't. So I'm constantly saying, be quiet over there, you're snoring, I can't rest. Messing up my rest. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. I saw 2 or 3 at least. The first one I saw,
So really, there's not much on our stuff except for what Frankie's gonna.
Girl, that hearing.
little fever
Well, that's true. Yeah. I don't know. They had no car showing them. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I said I was just gonna ride through it. And then once I started running around the park and walk.
I wish they would have somewhere putting up a site or somewhere. Put those events in. I think I did see it in the paper.
And I remember and I didn't know what to do that day. I don't want to buy. I just don't want to.
I don't know if she's sitting in it. She had me in there and had 2 or 3 books. I guess she watches it.
She's like in her.
You have to get up early.
No, I don't do
Yeah, 2 days a week I get up at 3:15.
Oh, really?
Can't seem to get to bed until 10:30 or 11. Best I can do.
And how far you have to go?
I have to go to Fort Bragg. I go check the town trace work. And I go to Crystal Lake over the pass.
Oh, okay.
I was at Fort Bragg on Mondays and I go to travel resorts down in
Oh, good, okay. Oh, okay. That is
It's in our.
It's on Tuesdays.
Yeah, why?
Zoom, but it's webinar.
That's what I'm trying to find is where it's
Webinar.
It says it in the, so pull up resolution accepting high school properties fund. You see that?
Yeah, it's about time, 7:59.
Okay, good.
I didn't realize it was getting that close. Are you ready? Are you ready over there, Commander One? The Starship? I'll call the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners regular session to order. I know y'all were having a good time talking out there, but we're ready to get the show running.
Here.
First item is the invocation. We'll ask Commissioner Dobbs if she will.
Let's all bow our heads. Father in heaven, here we are again. We come thank you for each day that you give us and ask for your guidance as we make decisions for our county. We continue to pray for the leaders of our country and ask your forgiveness for our wrongdoings. We have so much to be thankful for that in our daily business, we tend to forget that you created us to love and to take care of your world. You gave us spring, and we see the beautiful flowers blooming out all around us today and every day. Everything we have is from you, God, and we just thank you again and give you the praise and the honor. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, God. Next item is pledge allegiance. If you are stand, say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the approval of the agenda.
I make
The
approval.
agenda by Commissioner Dawson. Have a second. Second by Commissioner Hassel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look over those? Any questions? Hearing questions, somebody like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
A motion's been made by Commissioner Dottie Robinson. Do I have a second? Got a second by Commissioner K. Robinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I think we didn't have someone sign up for the public forum, so Mr. Manager, could you run through those rules, please?
Yes, sir. The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing members of the public to comment on county business or items or the commissioners' agenda. This period shall not serve as a forum debate, Board of Commissioners. Remarks shall be addressed directly to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. The chairman shall open the public comment period. Any person who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and announce his or her name and physical address prior to making comment. Any citizen desiring to comment on a matter of public interest within the authority of the Board of Commissioners to legislate in an open forum shall be allotted 3 minutes. Citizens may yield their time on a specific topic by utilizing no more than 2 citizens' time slots. This will allow up to, but not more than 9 minutes. The county manager shall notify the chairman upon the expiration of the allotted time.
Mr. Pete Herron, would you like to come forward? If you would, state your name
Yes, sir.
and your
Pete-
address.
Pete Herron, 3060 Lovejoy Road, Troy, North Carolina.
You can pull that mask down if you'd like.
Is it okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Thank
So we
you
can
so
hear
much.
you a little better.
I appreciate that. Thank you
You're
so
quite
much. Commissioners, I wanted to attend the meeting here tonight to show you the respect of introducing myself. Again, my name is Pete Herron, and I'm running for sheriff of Montgomery County. Currently, I'm the Sergeant Major at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and I'm also the director of the Basic Law Enforcement Training Program at Montgomery Community College. Throughout the course of my life, I've served our nation, our state, and our county. I served our nation with 22 years of military service. I've served our state, working with youthful offenders at San Marcan Manor, and as a law enforcement officer with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. I've served the county as Sergeant Major at the Sheriff's Office and as Director of the Basic Law Enforcement Training Program at the Community College. I have the utmost respect for law enforcement in Montgomery County, from our local town police departments to the state law enforcement agencies, and I look forward to working with them in the future as sheriff to serve the citizens of Montgomery County. I want you all to know tonight that your concerns for Montgomery County are also my concerns, and I look forward to working with you as a group and personally, and along with other leaders in Montgomery County, and that we would humble ourselves together, that we would listen, and that we would act to serve the citizens of Montgomery County. I look forward to visiting with you and attending commissioner meetings here in the future, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and to be able to introduce myself. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have anyone else that wants to speak, or is there anyone else here that would like to speak that's not on the list? Okay, then. The next item is the public hearing. Mr. Manager, you want to speak to that?
I think Mr. Putman is going to help us on this item.
Sir. Well, thank you all very much for inviting me here today and for hearing this case. If you don't mind, I'll take this mask off.
Yes, sir.
It's just all over the place. So tonight we're here to talk about rezoning 2-2021 for Montgomery County. Do we have a presentation? Yes. I think I've got a variety of slides that we can show the property on. Every commissioner member should have received a packet that resembled this. Briefly, I'm going to review the packet and its attachments. So the first attachment is an application for rezoning 2-2021. The second is a staff report, followed by a list of permitted and conditional uses for residential 3 districts, followed by future land use plan map and policy sections, followed by aerial photographs, a current zoning map, and then finally a Board of County Commissioners consistency statement if you move to approve the rezoning request. So I am going to just jump right into the staff report section, and I will just give a brief overview, executive summary, if you will, of the upshots of that staff report. So the applicant is here with us today, Mr. Art Russell, and the parcel in question and location is ID number 763100345236. The applicant would like to rezone this property from residential 2 to residential 3. Residential 3 carries with it a number of new permitted uses and conditional uses that need to be considered throughout the rezoning application process. As far as the history of the property, it appears to have been zoned in its entirety as an R2 since the adoption of countywide zoning in 1999 or 2000. The R2 district is established to promote low and medium density residential neighborhoods per Article 3, Section 1.1 of the ordinance. And I've also provided a list of permitted uses that are currently available in R2 districts. As far as zoning district standards, the R3 district requires the same minimum standards required in the R2 district. So it's not differentiating or adding new standards as far as minimum lot size, a minimum width of the lot, the setback requirements, nothing like that. However, as I mentioned before, the rezoning from a residential 2 to a residential 3 will provide a number of new uses, one of which is in particular interest to the applicant, and that is single-wide mobile homes. The surrounding zoning and land use, and thank you, for the transition. As you can see illustrated on the projector, it is adjacent and abutting to R3 properties. It's also adjacent and abutting to R2 properties. In particular, there's an R3 to the north, there's an R2 to the south, there's both an R2 and R3 to the east, and then similarly, there's both an R2 and R3 to the west. So as far as the existing site conditions, the property currently hosts a single-wide mobile home unit that's what we call legal non-conforming. It was there before the ordinance was adopted. Some of the property, many of the properties in the area also host that similar use. So that's represented by those R3 districts potentially. As far as watershed and floodplain, the property is not located in a flood hazard area nor a watershed. For transportation, it's got road frontage to Substation Road, which is an NCDOT maintained system. In water and wastewater disposal, water is currently serviced to the area, and then the county health department has issued permits for the property before. For the future land use plan, it establishes specific policy guidelines for various uses that really dictate or regulate the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, which is integrated into the zoning ordinance. So the specific policy sections that we're pulling for this rezoning case are residential policies 6.1 and residential policy 6.11. Residential policy 6.1 reads that residential development should be encouraged to occur in areas where existing infrastructure and services are present and or to develop in or near areas of existing residential activity. Meanwhile, policy section 6.11 lists the continued viability of single-family homes as a major housing source should be encouraged while allowing and encouraging alternative forms of housing. These future land use policy map references and the future land use policy map are also referenced as attachment 4 of your packet. So now I'll get to the staff's review of the application. So the applicant must place all property similarly situated in the area in the same category or in the appropriate complementary categories. And in response to that, the applicant said that he's requesting a rezoning from R2 to R3 and that 4 of the 8 adjacent parcels are currently zoned R3 as we went over before. For criteria B, the applicant must demonstrate that there is convincing demonstration that all uses permitted under the proposed zoning district classification will be in the general public interest and not merely the interest of an individual or a small group. The applicant states that his desire is to remove an existing 1976 single-wide mobile home and replace it with an 1988 single-wide mobile home. Staff believes that this intent would permit a schedule of new uses. However, it may serve to protect the interests of Montgomery County and its residents. For item C, staff concluded a very similar response to a very similar question. So the question asked, what is the proposed use of the property? And so similarly, he's saying that he would like to remove an existing mobile home and replace it with a newer mobile home. So staff found the same conclusion, that R3 zoning would permit a schedule of new uses which may serve to protect the interests of the general public. For item D, the applicant must demonstrate that there is convincing argument that the character of the neighborhood will not be materially and adversely affected by any use permitted in the proposed change. So the lot is very grand in size, as you can see there. There's existing single-wide mobile homes around the property, on adjacent properties. There's an existing single-wide mobile home on the property itself, right? And so staff did not believe that these new uses that are being proposed by the applicant would disrupt the current character of the neighborhood that the parcel currently resides in. And finally, the proposed change must also be in accordance with any land use plan and sound planning principles. Staff has found that the proposed rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because primarily leaning on policy section 6.11, it promotes a potential new and alternative form of housing and a variety of scheduled new uses that help preserve the integrity and character of the neighborhood. So in conclusion, the area is characterized by both R2 and R3 zoning districts. It does not appear that the rezoning would have a negative impact to the property nor surrounding properties. And all uses permitted in R3, as a disclaimer, must be considered for this application of rezoning because as affixed in the following page, there are a schedule of new uses that would be allowed in R3 zonings. And as another disclaimer, this staff finding has been made prior to any presentation of the applicant other than the planning board meeting. And the planning board did come to the Board of County Commissioners with a consistency statement and a recommendation for the approval of the rezoning.
Hello there.
How are you? Got caught in my throat. I'm Art Russell. I guess the way this came about, I'm not too far from hoping to retire, and I was going to build me a little cabin. I live by myself, and I was going to give my son my house because I don't need it. It's way too big for me. Well, during all this, a boy that works with me, he has a mobile home on his grandfather's property. Him and his grandfather had a falling out, and he's going to have to move it. So I said, thinking to myself, well, instead of me spending 3 or 4 of my years trying to build this cabin, I'll be satisfied with this. So I'll purchase the mobile home from him. Went to apply for the permits, and I did not know it had been rezoned. Had not a clue. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I plan on living there. I'm going to let my son have my house. He got his whole life ahead of him, and, you know, I just want to coast on through it. So, and that's what's that.
That it?
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Russell.
I guess, is there anyone else from the audience that would like to speak to this? If not, I'm going to get a motion to close the public comment period.
I'll make a motion that we close the public.
Have a motion by Commissioner Kay Robinson to close the public comment period. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Dottie Robinson. I'll give that one to her this time. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So, I guess we're looking now for a motion on this property. If someone would like to make a motion.
I will make a motion, unless there's discussion, that we approve the change from, I don't have it in front of me, to R3, R2 to R3? R2 to R3. And do we need to do can it be a combined motion that we also adopt a consistency statement?
Yes, it can.
So we are approving the change and adopting a consistency statement attesting to the proposed amendments alignment to the future land use plan.
Have a motion by Commissioner Dawson to do all she just said. Do I have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hassel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Art.
There you go, Art.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That seemed like a lot for me to have to repeat, but you did good.
I feel like in the earlier packet I saw the statement, but I don't see it in here now. Do you see it in there? I know I
Next
read it.
item on the agenda is the county manager's reports.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few items here, most of which are carryover items. But the first item is a proposed resolution that would accept properties from Montgomery County Schools, and this is the East Montgomery and West Montgomery properties, high school properties. And as I believe was mentioned in a prior meeting, that there was an agreement entered between Montgomery County and the Montgomery County Schools back in 2018 that prescribed the transfer of title of the properties to the county in exchange for funding for Montgomery Central High School project. So we're to that date. The Board of Education has authorized the superintendent to proceed with the transfers. We have, let's say, 60 or 90 days to review that. This resolution would forward the process and accept the properties from the school, and we would proceed to the actual transfer of title, assuming we accept the properties and the resolution is approved. The amendment I spoke of, or the agreement, I'm sorry, did not speak to any, I call it residual use by the schools or some of the appurtenant structures. It was silent to that. The school school system has indicated a wish to continue some use, particularly of the residential structures, maybe some of the athletic facilities. Seeing that the agreement is silent to those uses, the resolution would set aside some conditions on the transfer, conditions on the acceptance that we would allow some continued use. Those are spelled out in the resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have regarding the transfer and or any residual uses of the property.
So we'll ask residual uses. Obviously, if we end up selling a property, then that eliminates that, correct? Unless with the person, the entity that purchases the property may still be able to allow those things.
Right, if they come to some understanding that they can continue the use,
Right.
that's fine. The residential structures in particular, there are two, one at each school. The next agenda item, fast forwarding a little bit, the recommendation presented to you guys would be to accept the East Montgomery High School property as a whole, including the residential structure. The West Montgomery High School residential structure, I don't have an intended use for it right off the top of my head, and I don't have an objection to allowing them to retain ownership.
May I ask a question? Because I'm not familiar with the property. I mean, we don't have a picture of that. So I don't know where like, for example, with East, based on folks that we have spoke to, obviously based on where that is located, they would need that within the property if they purchase the property. Where is the residence located within the West property? If we think of, obviously, that will not be a property that we will maintain,
Right.
the whole school property. So we're going to have to find a use for it, eventually, right? We haven't done as much work on that as we have with East, but is that going to be a hindrance potentially? I mean, I just want to make sure again, I think I've said this statement before, not cutting our nose off to spite our face. Not saying that we can't allow them to still use it while we have ownership of it, but should we sell it? I don't know that it's best for us to have it surveyed out and cut off and left. Does that make sense? Because I don't know the location of it. You guys may.
The location is the West Montgomery property is a little more disjointed. Part of the property is across the highway and adjacent to the railroad, actually. And there's a separate parcel to I guess that would be the south and east of the property that actually is part of the school property, but it's actually a separate deeded parcel. Where the residential structure lies is mostly to the south of the property, but carving it out would be a slight donut hole. Not terrible, but there would be somewhat of a donut hole.
Because I think those are things we have to think about, because we have to think about not today, but what potentially are we going to do with that property? And does it make sense to survey that out and leave that property sitting there in the midst of what I don't know. Again, as long as we have ownership, it could be utilized, but if we don't have ownership of that property any longer,
Yeah, the East Montgomery residential structure
Yeah.
is,
it's a,
it's pretty clear
Yeah.
that there is a potential use that could utilize the structure
Mm-hmm.
and us retaining us assuming ownership would be
Yes.
of benefit. West Montgomery the crystal ball is much cloudier.
yeah, we don't know yet.
I don't know, but I don't have any objection to them retaining ownership either.
Which would entail us having it surveyed and cut out separately?
You would survey off the structure and any necessary appurtenances, septic tank, well, or whatever may be there, that would be required of the home. The resolution would spell out that you would only cut out the minimum required so that it can stand alone.
Well, that road, they would have to utilize that road to get to the house. I mean,
Yes.
Well, the road is there, and that is what's utilized, but the parcel, you would cut it out so that they would have ingress and egress to the highway, so that they would not have to use the road,
Yeah.
which might require moving a driveway somewhere down the road, but there's opportunity to cut it out without depending on that road.
Well, I don't know, my opinion is, I would think they should sign it back over to us till we decide.
And that's up
I mean-
to the board. The original agreement did not,
Say what you just said.
right, it was silent.
Right.
The focus was, the new school and consolidation, and, the residual uses were not considered at the
Yeah,
time,
no.
probably, or not as important as moving the process forward.
It's just the properties would come back to the
Right,
county.
the properties would come back. So that's up to the board. Again, temporary uses, I have no objection to.
No.
I don't have any objection to them retaining ownership of the west home. The east, I would recommend that we assume the entire property.
Well, my thoughts are we retain the property, and like you say, until we find a use or whatever, I guess, continue to let it be used as whatever they're using it for now,
Right.
Yeah.
till we decide. And
That's-
that's the one thing, we were talking about, was having a work session so that we could iron these situations out, so. I think east is
That's a
okay,
done, yeah.
and the west one, we change that resolution or whatever.
That's- That's fine. We can change the resolution.
So we can state that both properties will transfer fully, however, they can have residual uses until we do something different with the property, which includes the residents at both east and west. And potentially, Frankie, so if down the road, we determine what the use is for west, and at that point, we then want to have it surveyed out and us turn that property back over to the school, we could do that, correct?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that
Yes,
says you
yeah.
can't
But
go
for-
down the road as the crystal ball is
Right,
not
once
quite as
we know, yeah.
cloudy, and have a supplemental agreement, or
Right, but for now, if properties transfer back, then we,
so I would recommend on the resolution on your packet, page 45, where it says at the very bottom where it says be it further resolved that the first, after the comma, the rest of that first sentence be removed, and that would leave the authorization to allow for any other temporary uses
Yeah.
of both schools.
yes.
Yes,
Do you see that?
that makes the most sense. That leaves our options open to whatever we deem necessary later.
Yeah, so just be striking those 2.5 lines of text.
Yes. Yep.
So we need the motion on that?
Yes, please. If you want to move forward with accepting the school.
Yes. I will make a motion that we accept the resolution that is accepting the properties from Montgomery County Schools with the change included on the resolution.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Dawson to accept that, and
Second.
have a second by Commissioner Hassel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right. Speaking of East Montgomery High School, there's a request to consider another resolution that would offer the site for sale to the state of North Carolina. We all have seen the information from the Department of Public Safety. I think some of our other local governments in the county have also been privy to a presentation where they have an interest in establishing a school safety program, and East Montgomery checks many of the boxes that they would like to see in establishing that program. A little bit of a chicken or the egg dilemma here in disposing of the property potentially to the state of North Carolina. It's price versus availability. You know, what's the price? Are we making it available? This resolution would be official action of the County Board of Commissioners to inform the state that the property is available for sale. And it's my understanding that they will then order an appraisal from their administrative offices, and then we would have an idea of what they would be willing to pay up to. And if it's sufficient, you know, we can move forward with the transaction. If not, we have a debate, or I guess ultimately, if we change our minds, it's not too late. The deed hasn't been signed. So, but this would officially let them know that the property is available for them to consider.
And if we approve this, next step is we have to generate communication to them stating that we are willing,
Yes, I will
looking to sell.
communicate the intentions of the board to
Okay.
our folks at the state tomorrow, probably.
Any board members have any comment? Well, someone would like to make a motion that we accept this resolution?
I vote to approve the resolution offering East Montgomery High School property for sale to the state of North Carolina.
Motion's been made by Commissioner K. Robinson. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Dawson. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do you want me to, or is that you?
I'll handle it. So the next item on the agenda are some recommendations that were forwarded via the administrative offices from the Montgomery County Tourism Development Authority. There's actually 5 recommendations, some of which can actually be acted on tonight, some of which maybe we take under advisement or discuss and maybe take up at a later date, such as during the budget season, which will be on us very soon. But some of the recommendations that were forwarded from the Tourism Development Authority are to adopt a resolution requiring short-term rentals to register with the county, implement software to allow short-term rentals to pay occupancy taxes online, approve 2 additional members to the Montgomery County Tourism Development Authority Board and increase the term limits from 1 year to 2 years, designate Chris Cagle as chairman, and appropriate funds for a director. So some of the recommendations can be considered and acted on now. Some will require additional deliberation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have regarding those recommendations. There is actually a suggested motion here that could take care of a couple of those recommendations. Expansion of the board to 5 members rather than 3, imposing staggered terms at the same time, and designating Chris Cagle as the chairman if the board so chooses to act on those recommendations. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have. And there is also a copy of the bylaws attached in your packet, starting on page 51.
And they are the same bylaws that have been in place since they were put back, the TDA was put,
Yes.
reinstated, I think so.
It may have not picked up on any potential changes
Right.
when the program converted the file, but under Article 2, what's on page 51 would be proposed changes, would include proposed changes, which would change the membership to 5 members, staggered term, and I believe that was the extent of the changes.
Okay. Bless you.
And we'll just go with the ones you're recommending and hold off on the, I guess, the salary part and the.
Yeah. The appointing a director would, well, appropriating funds for a director would be action of the board. Being that we're so close to budget season, that's a recommendation that we can consider during that time. I mean, we're a month out from budget season. And let's see, a resolution requiring short-term rentals to register with the county. There's a little bit of uncertainty regarding registration, whether that follows some sort of taxation rule or does it follow some sort of land use rule. Land use rule, David would be involved, and that would be a permitting thing. So that's probably going to require a little more study, at least on my part, before we embark on some sort of registration. Not that it's a bad idea. There are some state laws that we have to make sure we're able to adhere to.
So that has to do with like Airbnbs and things that are
Right.
more located in our county side around the lake, that some do register and they pay taxes, but others we don't know. So if we don't have a way to track that, we can't be collecting our 6% occupancy tax. It's easy for places like hotels, et cetera, but with Airbnbs or VRBOs and things, it's a little more cloudy. So
That's correct.
we've got to figure out a way to be able to capture that and ensure that we're getting that 6% into the county.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, especially for those that are using the Airbnb, those type services. Airbnb collects the taxes on behalf of the property owner and then transmits those to the county, but we don't know, in that transmittal, there's no advice as to what properties that are being taxed. So that would be, part of a registration process that would help us identify the properties that are currently being used. Another recommendation was to implement some software that would allow folks to streamline payment of their short-term rental occupancy taxes. I have actually reached out to a company that's more or less specializes in this, actually received pricing today. That is something we could also maybe consider in the budgeting process. I believe the pricing was about $4,000 a year for the software, but I haven't tested it or anything to determine whether it would work for us, but that may be a funding consideration as well. And then the other two recommendations to designate Mr. Cagle as chairman and approve 2 additional members would be satisfied if we approve the amendments to the bylaws.
Any discussion? You guys good? If not, then I will move that we approve the amendments to the Montgomery County Tourism Development Authority bylaws to include the provision of a 5-member board with 2-year staggered terms, as well as we designate Chris Cagle as chairman.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Dawson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hassel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So Frankie, may I ask a request? when we do our next work session, could this be a topic on there? Because I know there's some things to look at knowing in the bylaws too of that 6% occupancy tax. I mean, there's dollars that are set aside to go to Saturday group, once our website's up and running, to manage that website, and potential if we hire somebody and, if we have a role. There's lots of things to look at because that can change, right? Once they have that website up, we don't have to necessarily pay an outside organization to do that. So there's lots of things to talk about within that.
We could certainly discuss in more detail. The appropriation budget
Yeah.
process is coming up, and tentatively set aside a time for us to have a workshop
Yeah,
where we can discuss things in more detail.
perfect.
Would be, I would think, an appropriate time to discuss this in more detail, because it is an appropriation for an
Yeah.
expenditure. There's some expenditure request here. It's also a revenue. It's a
Mhm.
tax that's levied at 6%.
Mhm.
So we could see it from both sides during the
Right.
budgeting process, and would be a great time to discuss it.
Well, and I know our bylaws speak to how each 25% of that funding, that 6% tax comes in, how that's to be utilized. So, there's some ways we potentially, 25% of that is going to that company to maintain this website once it's up. So there's just things to look at.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. The next is that surplus property there.
Yes, so there's also a resolution here that's asking for the permission of the Board of Commissioners to authorize myself as county manager, or the county manager position, and the finance director, the authority to determine and dispose of surplus personal property. And this would be property valued at less than $30,000. And I've seen this work in other jurisdictions where it's part of the normal procurement process through finance, where you buy something, and then if you're replacing something, as part of that ongoing process, then you dispose of it. Traditionally, the county has participated in live auctions for personal property. There's nothing wrong with live auctions, but in the day of pandemics, it's a little tougher to have a live auction. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the county did not have an auction last year, so any property that needed to be sold and disposed of last year is still hanging on. What I've also seen in other jurisdictions that's successful is that process. You can list things online through sites such as GovDeals that would allow any and everybody in the world to bid on it, more than just for a few seconds on one day. So this resolution would allow disposal of things like that, and I like the online disposal option. It would be my preferred method of disposing, but there are occasionally things that you have to dispose of that really there's some gray area, and bringing it to the board every time, I don't know. Maybe if we have some extra aluminum laying around, the board wants to consider that, or just allow the staff to take it to the recycler and have some money submitted to finance. But it would cover things like that. But the resolution would provide the opportunity for a more streamlined process, and we would just incorporate that into our normal procurement and financial operations. Any transactions would have to be subject to audit annually by the auditor selected by the Board of Commissioners, and we would be required to keep a listing of the surplus items, where it was disposed and how much consideration that was received.
Anyone have any questions? Would someone like to make a motion that we grant that authority?
I make a motion that we approve the resolution giving the authority to the county manager, excuse me, and the finance director to dispose of property, surplus
Motion.
property.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Dottie Robinson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Kay Robinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next is the sale of the Haltawanger retreat properties.
So speaking of surplus property, we haven't talked about surplus property tonight. We've touched on this item in prior meetings. I believe I mentioned at the last meeting that the sale of this property is not quite as straightforward as it would be for most properties, because there is the ownership. The county owns 2 small pieces, and Pfeiffer University owns another piece that would serve both entities to be sold together. There was an agreement previously that indicated such that the county entered into with Pfeiffer University. That has since expired, but nonetheless planted the seed to where we are today. This resolution, this agreement, approval of this agreement, or authorizing me to approve the agreement, would see Pfeiffer deed their piece of property to the county, and we could sell those 3 properties as a whole, and further goes to outline how we would divide the proceeds. And the proceeds would be divided based on the percentage of current taxable value, which would mean we would give 15% of the proceeds to Pfeiffer University upon the sale. So that's simply what the proposed agreement is attempting to address, allowing for the properties to be sold all as one, and determining how much of the proceeds will go to Pfeiffer upon sale.
Anybody have any comments? I guess 15% is the best we can do.
Well,
That's based on what their current ownership
yeah,
is.
it was just seemed like a fair way to divvy it up based on the current value.
All right, I move we authorize the county manager to enter into an agreement with Pfeiffer University for the sale of the Halterwanger properties, whereby Pfeiffer will receive 15% of the net sales proceeds.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Dawson. Do I have a second?
A second.
I'll give the last one to you, Dottie. I'm going over here this time. May I second by Commissioner Hassel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Like to have a light so you tap on who's the first to get it. County reports. Mr. Manager is.
I don't have anything further to add, anything in addition to what's in your agenda packet, but I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you guys may have of the county reports, and if I can't answer them, I'll get an answer to you.
Anybody have anything they would like some more? The overtime, is that a big item? I mean, are we?
Overtime is always a concern. We are experiencing overtime in some departments, particularly that are not fully staffed. It's less of a discretionary measure and more of a necessity in some departments. So overtime does affect your budget. So yes, it is a concern, and it's a general concern, but again, it's out of necessity at this time.
So
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I know that with our water treatment facility, where we've had staffing challenges, I know that the county has worked with NC Works, with the college, to put together, I don't even know what the program's called, where somebody is actually on the job training to get time. So that did work out. That's been a benefit. Renee, do we know yet?
We've had some mixed results.
Okay.
Renee, you're welcome to speak on it.
Within the last 3 weeks, we actually had 2 applicants. One that we were going to put through the program of on-the-job training for our 911 center, and one that we were going to put through the WEX program through college to become a water treatment plant operator. Unfortunately, the applicant for the 911 center decided that the 12-hour shifts were not going to fit into her lifestyle, and so she withdrew. I was notified yesterday by MCC that the candidate that we had done everything for the WEX program, had received an offer from a private employer and had decided to pursue that. So the good news is that we have a really great line of communication right now with
Right.
MCC, and they have not given up on us.
So Renee, with the on-the-job piece, like for 911, so that is funded through NC Works, correct? So that's not dollars that the county has to pay, that is dollars that, whether it's WIOLA or whatever that money source is. So that's a benefit to us. I mean, it didn't
Up to
work.
500 hours, which is
Yeah.
about a quarter of a year.
Yeah, so that's good though. I mean, and then,
Is that right?
Excuse me, there's a little bit of confusion there. The WEX program
Mhm.
is the 500 hours.
okay,
And that is actually where they become an employee of the college.
right. Mhm.
Now, what we need to do, I think, to be good stewards of that money, is to totally vet those applicants.
Absolutely.
And make sure that we're not gonna run into a stone wall at the
Right.
end.
Right.
The on-the-job training program will actually give us back 50% of the compensation that the applicant or the new hire earns. They will be employees of the county.
Right. Right.
The really great thing is that, like in the water treatment plant operator, we can't turn someone into being a water treatment plant operator in 500 hours.
Right.
But certainly in 500 hours, we're gonna know if we're going in the right direction.
Right.
And so they can transition from the WEX program to on-the-job training.
Perfect. Perfect. Good. Now we just have to find the right people that'll stay. But
Yes,
that's good.
ma'am.
Good. Thank you.
I don't have anything else, Mr.
I
Chairman.
do have one other question. The food pantry status, do we know? I
I
mean, obviously
believe-
weather's been better, so I haven't driven past there, so I don't know how
I
things.
believe they're pouring concrete tomorrow,
Okay,
which would mean there's some underslab
yeah.
progress,
Yeah.
plumbing in particular. So
Mhm.
pouring concrete is
Yeah.
a big step.
I know I haven't even paid any attention driving past there. Okay, good. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Mr. Manager, the only thing I have is, we want to embark on a work session idea for
Sure.
a little while to see how it works, to talk about some ideas and different things that we have. I think we were talking maybe the Thursday of the second week prior to our Tuesday meeting,
Okay.
so that, you know, if something came up and we wanted it on the agenda, we would have time to maybe push it forward. But basically just to talk and get ideas and just,
Perfectly fine.
might not be something that we do forever. I know you and I spoke about it, and we don't want to get into where, like I say, we're meeting 5 minutes in one meeting and have to come back and meet 5 in another one, so.
Do we want to go ahead and schedule something now?
I think we would.
Starting in May?
Is that how everybody feels? You'd like to go ahead and?
Second
Okay.
Thursday, work session.
In the evening? So I don't know
Yeah,
what time
in the
works
evening,
for-
yeah, I think from either 7 to 9, possibly. It may not be that long.
Do it a little later, 7 o'clock.
6:30 to,
Whatever works for y'all,
8:30.
I'm good.
does anybody have any, 6 o'clock to,
6.
Let's
8
just keep
o'clock?
it at 6, so it's
6?
consistent. I think
Okay.
that would make more sense.
Okay.
So we'll give us 2 hours, 6 to 8. We'll use it if we need it. If not, we'll get out early.
yeah, it's not a 3:15 night, so I can
Well,
stay out a little later.
Yeah, you just got to figure that out.
So in the interim,
Yes.
unless it's permanently established, we'll have to treat it as a special meeting,
Special.
Okay.
which, that's
Yes.
fine. It just requires that we do different types of notice.
Okay.
But that's okay. We'll notify the Sunshine List and those that are, others that are required.
Okay. Perfect.
Anyone have anything else? Well, would someone like to make a motion that we adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Hassel. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Kay Robinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No one wants to oppose?